So Precious, lovely to have you here, and I'm looking forward to this, to getting to know you a wee bit more, because you come out to church every week and we see you with your lovely family. Oh no, let's start that again. See, it'll be me that hides it up.
I'll probably be rambling more.
So Precious, lovely to have you in the chair here and to hear a wee bit more about you, because I love coming in and seeing you every Sunday. Every Sunday I get a big hug from your two lovely girls, and but I'm looking forward to knowing a bit more about you. So just to start with, because I'm aware that there's two services sometimes and people maybe don't know who you are, so maybe just for people watching, tell us a little bit about you and your family as you are just now.
Right, thank you so much for the opportunity to share today. I am really excited to be here, to be honest. My name is Precious Mohai. I am a mother of two lovely girls, aged 5 and 7. And I am married to a handsome young man by the name Wilson Mohai. So that's our small family there. Hopefully we'll grow it, as time goes on, by God's grace. So that's my family. But I come from a family of 4 as well. 2 girls, 2 boys, and me being the third born in my family where I come from.
So you live in Peterhead at the moment.
Yes.
But you didn't always live in Peterhead, did you?
No.
Where did you come from and where did you grow up?
Right, so I am originally from Zimbabwe, in Africa, and Zimbabwe is a country in Africa, but I come from a small town called Masvingo. So that's where I grew up. So when we're in Masvingo, there's a village, or I would say a smaller other village in Masvingo called Ringo Mine. So that's where I grew up, and that's where I was born 32 years ago.
Okay.
Yes.
So a little bit like we've got Inverallochie just on the outsides of Fraserburgh.
Yes.
So you would be the equivalent of Inverallochie. You grew up in a little village.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So that's where I was born, and that's where I grew up until the time when my mom passed on.
Okay.
And I moved to stay with my mom's sister. Yeah. So
how old were you when your mum died?
I think I was around, I can't remember the exact age, but it should be around 14 when my mom passed on. So something really important that I would also share with you about who I am and where I'm coming from. So growing up, I grew up with my mom. I don't know my dad.
Okay.
I never got to know my dad. So that in itself is another story that I can also share with you. It's part of me, it's part of my story, and it has affected me in a great way, but in some way, because I believe in Jesus, it has inspired me to be who I am today. So basically, my mom single-handedly raised all of us, and I did mention that we were 4.
Yeah.
So as a family of 4, my mom had the first two, I'm the third born, the first and the second born had their own dad.
Okay.
I've got my own dad, and there's my young brother who has got his own dad. So my mom just single-handedly, took care of us as we were growing up. It's very unfortunate, that kind of a situation is not something that most of us would be happy to share about, but I'm not ashamed to share about that, because out of that situation came my testimony.
Yeah.
And I have a lot that I can share with you about that. So she was a loving mom. She was a beautiful mom, my pillar, my support. She was just a teacher in a little village called Rinkomine, and she wasn't earning much in terms of income, but she managed to, with the little that she would get, she managed to take care of us. And as you know, in Zimbabwe, the economic situation there is not as great, but she did her best to make sure that we had something to eat, we could survive.
Just sounds like an incredible woman.
Yes.
Yeah. And when so you mentioned, you've also mentioned as well that your mum passed away. So when did that happen? How old were you when your mum passed away?
So like I said before, I think I was around 14.
Okay.
Should be. I was very, very young. But growing up since, from childhood, I mean, every human being, every person under the sun, you always have a dream to grow up in a family with a mom and dad, and you imagine all these beautiful things happening in a family, in a proper family setup, where you've got your brothers, your sisters, your mom and dad. You sit down every day, have supper together, and that's an experience that I never got. And it's something that has haunted me for a very long time from childhood. And because of that desire to, to grow up in such a family setup, which I never got, I loved my mom so much. And I felt that she was always there for me, because she was always there to support us, to provide for us, and she was just a pillar of strength. So I also grew up with a void. I would call it a void, simply because it was this emptiness, this feeling of rejection, that my dad never loved me. He was never there for me. I don't know him. I've never known him. And it's something that's not so easy to go by as you grow up. So it really affected me as a kid, going to school and hearing other children talking about what their dads are doing for them. It was really difficult.
So as much as your mom was amazing and almost went beyond and what maybe a lot of other mums have to do, there was this void and ache. Sounds like almost an ache growing up as a child, that you were missing out.
Exactly. It was just it's just a void that cannot be filled by anything. See, when you've got a father, nothing can replace that. Nothing can replace the dad that God gave you. And us being human beings, us being people, you basically expect your dad to be there for you, which is something that never happened. And so that rejection is something really challenging. It can either break you if you are not taught how to go by it. So what my mom made sure, or the best thing that my mom would do, is to make sure that we know about Jesus. We go to church. And I'm sure when she did that, when she would, make us go to church, make us pray every single day, read the Bible with us, share Bible stories with us, she knew that, if you start knowing Jesus from a young age, that in itself will help you overcome challenges that come with such situations. So little did I know that was one thing, or a legacy, that my mom actually was leaving for me, introducing me to church, introducing me to Jesus. She was actually building a foundation in me. And by the time she passed on, it was a breaking point for me, to be honest, because she was everything I ever had. I had Jesus to lean on. I knew that prayer is the go-to place for anything that is challenging in life. And I would say that really helped me.
Would you say when your mum passed, was that a time in your life where your faith in Jesus became stronger? Or was he always someone that you depended on growing up?
Absolutely. I depended on my mom for everything. For everything. I just felt she was everything I had.
Yeah.
She was just the best thing that God gave to me. And, you know, sometimes when you think about God, Him being God, and knowing everything, He's an all-knowing God. When my mom passed on, I remember she was buried in the rural areas where she also grew up, where her parents were buried. So on the day when she was buried, like I told you, we were 4 of us with different fathers. There was a family meeting that was held in the village. And, you know, the other 2 were a bit grown up. And myself and my little brother were just, you know, kids. All the relatives, like the brothers, my sister's brothers and immediate relatives, sat in a circle, and we were made to sit on the ground at the center as people, you know, discussed on who would take care of us. And someone posed a question to say, who's going to take Precious? Who's going to take Tatenda, who is my little brother? And for a moment, no one said, I can.
Oh, Precious.
So it was quite a breaking point. It was really a challenging situation. And at that moment, I just felt like, God, if you are God, you know that I don't know my dad. You put me in the situation, and apparently I can see no one wants to take care of me, and my mom is gone.
The one that you depended on,
The
and that
one
was
I
your
depended
security.
And we go to church, we pray, we do all things that, you know, you can possibly do as a Christian, to show God that you believe in Him, and that situation falls upon you. It was not easy.
No.
But that's the moment.
Sorry, how old was your little brother at this time?
My little brother was just, I can't remember how old he was, but he wasn't even going to nursery.
So here's you, 14, which
Yes.
is a challenging time
Yes.
in anybody's life, being a teenager, isn't it? And
Yes.
with a little brother.
Ah,
So you were all your little brother had
yes.
as well.
Yes. So apparently that's the moment when I realized that the only thing I have left for me is Jesus. A few moments later, after, you know, a few minutes, that's when, you know, people tried to say, okay, we'll have to make a plan on how we raise school fees for them, but, you know, my sister had to take care of us.
Sorry to interrupt again, but I mean, I think that's something that we take for granted in our country. So school in Zimbabwe had to be paid for?
We do pay for school fees back in Zimbabwe,
Okay.
and if you don't have school fees, you don't go to school.
Okay.
And sometimes if you don't have the proper uniform, you can't go to school. So all that needed a lot of financial support. We really needed a lot of financial support. And the one person who was providing for us was Normal. So that was the moment when I realized that the only thing I'm left with is my young brother, but I've got Jesus more than anything.
Yeah.
And my faith grew from that time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, to cut the long story short, my sister had to eventually say, take care of us. It was her first year to start working. She wasn't earning anything. She was not working, you know, full time. It was just a contract that she had got, so she wasn't earning much. So most of the time, from that time when my mom passed on, we would survive from handouts from other people. support from church sometimes, because we would go to church. And I think above everything else, that's when I started to become more and more prayerful, because I got to a point when I was really thinking the only answer to all the questions I have, and to the peace that I'm looking for, is Jesus, because no other human being could really answer me. So I started wanting to know more and more about God. I started reading the Bible more. I started to have this closer personal relationship with God. I would have prayers not only on a Sunday, but I would pray during my own time, read the Bible more, really, believe that God can do it.
Yeah.
And I am here today to testify that He is a God that He is.
Well, and it sounds like God became like everything you'd lost from your mom. So if you needed someone to speak to, God was the one that you went to. And
Yes, apparently. So, see, there's sometimes also when you're looking for opportunities in life, if I have to be very practical, we are all human beings. We look for jobs. We look for, means and ways to survive as people. And we come across situations where nepotism, rules a lot, especially when it comes to jobs and all that. It's just an example. And you hear, people who are related to this person, who are related to these people, who know their relatives, who know their dad. Sometimes their parents stand up for them and they get jobs, but you have no one. And, you totally depend on God.
Yeah.
And that experience in my life, the total dependence on God, strengthened me and taught me to love God more, because where I would genuinely look for the face of God, He showed up.
yeah,
Because my faith was built on that. So in as much as it was a challenging situation, I believe that it happened for a reason.
yeah,
It happened so that I can believe more in God. I would be here today to testify about the goodness of God. I would be here today to testify and share with somebody that He is a real God.
yeah,
He hears. He answers prayer. He changes things. He
Yeah.
does exceedingly, abundantly more than anything we can ever think of or imagine.
And even the fact that you're sitting here, and well, you've got a good job, haven't you? So I take it you did finish school. You did get through school and find a your place in the world as a young adult. So tell us a little bit more about that. How have you come? So this was Precious, the orphan, left with nobody and depending on handouts and what other people could give you to finish school and to become a young adult. What happened after that? What happened when you...
Right,
So you finished school, obviously, did you?
Yes, so finished school by God's grace. It was like a relay of, people passing on the baton to each other to support me it's a miracle. It's a miracle. I remember when I finished my, what we call O-level. O-level is like when you go to academy, and after academy, you have to go to university. No one was there to support me. And, God raised, I prayed to God and I said, I want to go to university, Lord. And these are the kinds of prayers I do to God. They are so specific. If I want to go to university, I'm like so specific because I know He's a God who He is. So
Yeah.
I'm so specific. But anyway, I managed to do my university by God's grace. I did a degree in banking and finance.
Wow.
And I also after university, that's when I met my husband.
Yeah, I was just going to come to that because
Aye.
I want to know how Wilson came into
That's when
the
I
picture.
met my husband. So my final year in university, I got attachment. So attachment, that's like where you go to look for a job and get some working experience, and then you go back to school, to university just to complete your degree. So when I got a job at the biggest power station. That's where I got my attachment at the finance department, the biggest power station in Zimbabwe. And that's where I met my husband.
So did he work in the power station?
He was working
there?
in the power station, and this power station apparently was way out of Masvingo, and God just raised somebody who, said, just bring in your application, they are taking attaches, and that's how I got that job. And it was so far away from Masvingo, I never thought I would go there ever.
Yeah.
But this is how God works. This is we could never understand how God works. And I said, okay, if that's where I got the job, that's fine. And that's the place where God, had planned for me. And that's where I met my husband, Wilson. So
how old were you at this point?
I was 20, early 20s. Yeah, it was around my early 21, I think.
Yeah.
20 something. No, it's not 21, I can't remember, but it was during my 20s. So we met up with my husband, and I got married a year after, we met with my husband Wilson. And again, when it got to the marriage, we do have a cultural thing that we do in Zimbabwe. It's not cultural, but it's a process that you have to do. You don't just go and stay with somebody, but you have to gather all your relatives and make it official that you are getting married to this person, and they properly hand you over. And I didn't have relatives from my father's side, so it was a bit complicated, but I prayed about it, and God came through for me. So everything worked. I finally got hold of one of my father's sons.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a long story.
So you have was this a brother that you knew about?
I had to find out through my mom's friends,
okay,
who knew the other wife. And they said, we know he has got a son in this town. Go and look for him. He used to work for another bank. So I managed to locate him, and that's how I got married, with one relative from my father's side and a few relatives from my mom's side. So yeah, God came through for me, and I got married to a wonderful husband. And my prayer when I got to my husband is, God, I have gone through this situation, and I prayed that when I get married, I don't want to go through such a thing with my children.
Yeah.
I want my children, because I have known the pain and the challenge that comes with that. I don't want to have my children to go through the same thing. So again, it was my prayer, and I depended totally on God with my marriage, when it comes to my marriage. So I got married to Wilson about 10 years ago. So we've been together for almost 10 years now. We have got two beautiful girls, like I said, Natalie and Michelle, and God has been so faithful, even through my marriage. Marriage is not all rosy.
No.
We have gone through ups and downs, but through it all, we have totally depended on God. And I want to thank God, because when you pray, like I say, God hears. He gave me a husband who loves God, who totally depends on God. And when it comes to prayer, we pray together as a family. Whatever we do, we put God first. And God has really, been faithful in our marriage, to be honest. And he got a job here, which is the reason why we came to the UK. Things were really getting tough in Zimbabwe, and for some reason, he never thought you would apply for a job anywhere out of Zimbabwe because his heart was in Zimbabwe. But I encouraged him to like look for other jobs because life was just getting tough in Zimbabwe. And for some reason, he doesn't even remember when he did the application for the job that he currently is in. And he just got an email one day to say, you have a job at SSE in Peterhead. We never knew where Peterhead was.
No.
We simply knew it was in the UK. But I said to him, we prayed about it when you did the application because we totally believe in God. I said, God is faithful. He will not take us where His grace is not sufficient for us. So that's how we relocated from Zimbabwe to Peterhead, and here we are today.
Just, I mean, that in itself is an amazing story, isn't it?
Right.
From the biggest power station in Zimbabwe and the warmth
Yes.
to cold Peterhead.
No.
But we are so blessed that you did end up here and that you're part of our church family here.
Thank you so much.
And through all that, what a journey, Precious! What a journey of faith as well. You've come to from one side of the world to the other side of the world, but how you've described growing up and where you were as a 14-year-old girl, the journey that you've been on from there to be sitting here where you're at now with your own family,
Yes.
you see, and with your faith and with I can still hear through what you're sharing, still as dependent on God today as you were that day as a 14-year-old girl.
Yes.
And crying out to Him. And just as, obviously, I think so many people are going to be encouraged by what you've shared. Even listening to it, I didn't know it was as challenging as you've described those early years. But is there a verse, or is there, or something from the Bible that has, maybe carried you through all these years, or something that you could maybe share with everybody listening today that?
Right. Of course, I wouldn't say there is a single verse that has really carried me, to be honest. But what carried me, like I said, this story is not about me, it's about God. It's God Himself. But of course, I've got so many verses that have encouraged me through my journey, depending on what stage I would be in my life. So there's not like one verse, but I would say, God is always there for us, and there's nothing, if God is for us, nothing is against us. Nothing can be against us. And if we believe in God all the time, fully practice our faith, like I shared in the group chosen the other day, that faith is not an event that we decide to do at one point in time as Christians. But what has carried me through is the faith that I practice every single day in my life, and that what pushes God. And so I would say we should know the truth that Jesus is indeed the Lord, the Savior, the true way, the life, and our hope. And John 8 verse 32 says, and you will have knowledge of what is true, which will make you free. So I would say that verse, I always read about it. I always meditate on it. Sometimes when we go difficult situations, challenging situations in life, it's because the devil comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And because he knows that we are free when we believe in Jesus, he wants us to go through difficult situations, to put us in a corner when we go through challenging times, and take our peace away so that we cannot be free. But I would say You know, after reading John 8:32, which always reminds me that those are all fake situations. Those are all temporary situations. In as much as they seem so real,
Yeah.
but God is even more real than those situations. So we need to exercise our faith all the time. You know, because that's the truth of who we are. We have got a Father who is the creator of the universe, the owner of everything, the God who's above every situation, the God who answers. So if, you know, that's the verse I would probably say, I would have to share with everyone listening today, that let us know the truth. Let us not be fooled by other people who try and criticize Christianity. Other people who try and criticize the Bible, because everyone is free to share their own thoughts. But the truth remains the truth. And the truth is Jesus.
Yeah. And it sounds like for the little girl who didn't know your dad and came to a point where you'd know Mum, God has been your truth and your daddy, hasn't he?
Yes, yes, indeed.
And
Absolutely.
been there and given you all that you...
Absolutely. I'll probably share some photos, you know, just for somebody to have a visual, you know, journey and to see where God has taken me from where I came from the little village, Ringo Mine, when I was still young, to me being, you know, working in a bank in the UK.
It's amazing.
It's amazing.
It's
I
amazing.
never dreamt one day I would be here. And not only that, but I'm less than a year working in a bank in the UK. I've won so many awards. So, yeah, it can only be God.
God is good.
He is good.
He is good. And, oh, Precious, I thank you for coming and being so honest and vulnerable in sharing what you've shared. And he's not finished with you yet. You're only 32, aren't you? And
Yes.
your lovely family, and it'll be exciting to see what God continues to do in you. Your mum left that legacy of faith with you, didn't she?
Yes.
And now you're building a legacy with your girls and as a family too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.